Good evening, my name is Kacper Paradowski and you are watching Poland Daily News. The Council of the ruling United Right Coalition held a meeting this afternoon during which the final makeup of the government was established. The announcement is expected to be made official in the coming days. According to the information relayed by media, the government is to consist of 14 ministries. The new cabinet of Mateusz Morawiecki is to include 4 deputy prime ministers: Jarosław Kaczyński, Piotr Gliński, Jacek Sasin and Jarosław Gowin. The new faces in the government are to be Przemysław Czarnek, who is to take over the combined Ministry of Higher Education, and Grzegorz Puda, who is to head the Ministry of Agriculture. The head of the Ministry of Health, Adam Niedzielski, announced today new restrictions regarding the coronavirus epidemic in Poland. They are to concern, among other issues, the organization of wedding receptions. First and foremost, when it comes to limiting the number of guests allowed at large gatherings and weddings, in the green zone we will reduce the limit, which so far has been 150 people, to 100. I want to emphasize very clearly that recently, especially in the Małopolska district, such large gatherings have accounted for over 10% share in new recorded infections. This is not an intuitive indication, but one that results from our analysis of data and the impact of this phenomenon on the spread of the pandemic. As far as the yellow zone is concerned, the limit there was 100 people thus far. We want to reduce it to 75 people, while in the red zone this limit was 50 people and will remain unchanged. Among other things, it will remain the same due to the introduction of a new restriction that will appear in the red zone, which previously was not a part of our regulations. Basing our stance on example and analysis of the tools that have been used in other countries, we want to introduce a solution that would put additional restrictions on restaurants, bars and pubs. We want to impose the limit of those service points operating until 10 p.m., but only in the red zone. The third modification of the restrictions is the obligation to cover the mouth and nose in the open air. Until now, such an obligation had only been imposed in the red zone, while we want to broaden such an obligation to include the yellow zone as well. And now a murder that shocked Poland 22 years ago and still remains a mystery. On June 25, 1998, a gunman shot and killed the chief of police in front of his own house. The gun had a silencer on it and the murderer aimed at the policeman's head. For years, the authorities were unable or unwilling to find the perpetrator. Finally, after years of investigation and questioning over 400 witnesses in Poland and abroad, the prosecutor's office is demanding life imprisonment for the suspected main perpetrator, Igor M., and 3 to 15 years in prison for the remaining 6 accused. Agents of the Gdańsk Regional Office of the Central Anti-Corruption Bureau detained 3 people, including Dariusz K., the former chairman of the biggest Polish petroleum company Orlen and former member of the management brand of energy companies, Wojciech T., as the spokesman for the Minister Coordinator of Special Services, Stanisław Żaryn, reported. The detainees are to be charged with the suspicion of giving Sławomir N. financial bribes in the amount of several $100,000 in exchange for his help in them taking up lucrative positions in state treasury companies. The detainees were to give financial benefits to Sławomir N. in exchange for his help and favors, which was to lead to their appointment to the positions they held. The latter corruption activities supposedly did not take place at the time when Sławomir N. was holding important public functions in Ukraine, but at the time when he worked in Poland as the director of the Prime Minister's political office. The European Commission and the European Parliament are constantly accusing Poland and Hungary of violating the rule of law. In response to these accusations, Polish and Hungarian governments decided to establish the Rule of Law Institute, which would deal with thorough reflection on this heavily debated issue throughout the European community. TV Republika's reporter Magdalena Bałkowiec has more. Following a meeting in Budapest, Ministers of Foreign Affairs Peter Szijjártó and Zbigniew Rau stated that a joint rule of law institute announced yesterday by the heads of diplomacy of Poland and Hungary is to prevent from applying double standards towards Poland and Hungary by the European Union. According to the MPs of the Polish opposition parties, the purpose for the establishment of the institute is totally different.
To jest kompletnie jakiś bezsensowny.
Poland and Hungary will now allocate money to this institute in order to create new workplaces. However, the idea of this institute does not make any sense. My advice for the governments of Hungary and Poland is simply to follow the constitution.
Sama idea w ogóle bezsensowna.
According to foreign ministers Rau and Szijjártó, the European institutions have treated Poland and Hungary as punching bags for too long. This is just an empty political gesture, and it is not supported by any actions. According to the head of the Hungarian diplomacy, the European Union's report on the rule of law, which is to be put under discussion in Brussels, will be rather a political statement. The rule of law is a subject that is heavily politicized by the opposition. What we need is a good debate on what the rule of law and modern democracy is. The Polish-Hungarian institution is to promote debate and transparency in the European Union. That's all for tonight. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for Poland Daily Business. Good night.